anything distracting, people will look at it.
Yeah.
So I'm in the video. You're going to have trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's go for it.
All right, sweet.
Okay? All right?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Hey, Poncho from Another Day's Walk here. And we got Flamingo.
What's good, y'all?
And I would say this will be the last time you're going to see him, but you never know.
It's true.
You're now a triple crowner.
It's true. I am.
You're a triple, and that means you've hiked all 3 main trails.
I have. I guess the only shame is I haven't seen you on the PCT or the CDT, but I do get to talk about that now.
So yeah. First off, will you kind of explain to people that maybe don't know what a triple crowner is, what a triple crowner is?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 of probably the most renowned trails in the country. The Pacific Crest Trail, California, Oregon, Washington, 2,650 miles. You've got the Appalachian Trail, Georgia to Maine, 2,200. And then the Continental Divide Trail, which kind of ranges between 2,400 and 3,300 miles. So it's a bit of a oddball. But I hiked it this last year. Took me, I think, 98 days. And it was my final trail after I hiked the AT that got me to finish those 3 trails, thus creating my triple crown of hiking.
Now, as you were saying, the CDT could be different with mileage. Would you like to go a little more in depth on how that is the way it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's really unique about the Continental Divide is the trail is centralized on the watershed of the country, which essentially that's what the Continental Divide is, right? It's the rain comes down, it goes both ways. So it's actually one of the driest places. And the rule for the hiking the CDT is that you will remain on the CDT so long as you are 50 miles from the Continental Divide. And there is an official route.
Okay.
It's technically 3,100 miles, but there's so many alternates and so many options that it's very unofficial, and you can do a lot of different things. So my hike ended up being, even though I had pretty much an entire continuous footpath, it was about 2,600 miles, which is actually shorter than the PCT by a little bit.
So you could almost say you could hike the CDT twice and not hike the same exact spot, other than maybe starting and finishing in the same exact spot.
Yeah, totally. I think one of the most interesting yo-yo hikes you could possibly do would be the CDT, because you could do the trail so differently both ways.
Okay, since we're already on the CDT, let's go ahead and start with this trail, like, as itself. Mm-hmm. Which state do you think was the hardest on the CDT? Since not too many people, hear about the CDT. Not many people hike the CDT, as many know. So, to you, your personal opinion, what state was the hardest on the route you took?
Which a lot of people bypass Idaho altogether. They'll kind of cut through. It's called the Big Sky or Super Butte cutoff.
Okay.
I opted to go through Montana and Idaho, and a lot of that section you're kind of riding the border and you're actually on the Continental Divide. So instead of having a bunch of switchbacks like the PCT, it's more like the AT, but a little bit higher up, and you're kind of doing more of that straight up, straight down hiking. It's not always on a trail either. Sometimes it's on just a cattle road, and it can be kind of loose and hard to walk on. And then also, a lot of that Montana-Idaho section too it really is pretty dry, and you are prepared to do 20, 30 miles without water in New Mexico, but you're not necessarily expecting that in a place like Montana. So then you kind of hit a stretch, you're like, oh, I've got a little while, and it's pretty far between towns. I have a lot of food in my pack, I have a lot of water in my pack, it's heavy, and I was also doing that section in bedrock sandals because I wanted to see if I could find a shoe that would get me 1,000 miles really easily, and so my feet were killing me.
How long did you keep the sandals?
About 600 miles.
Okay.
It was I do not recommend it. Maybe if a big mile day is 20, then it would have been a little bit more manageable, but my feet were super dried out, cracked up, and there's just not a rock guard in those shoes.
What was the reason you decided to go with the sandals? Like, is it just to try to get 1,000 miles, or?
Yeah, so sandals are awesome if you can make them work, right? Because you've got this just like sturdy piece of rubber that holds together super well. I was really tired of the new line of Ultras because I was getting like 450 miles on them and they were just utterly trashed. So I did end up switching back to shoes. I managed to find an older pair of Ultras that hadn't been used, so I got a lot of miles on those and jumped around, but yeah, that was my rationale for better.
What do you believe the most beautiful state, as on your route on the CDT, or not even state in general, just like what area did you say wow the most in, or was you most impressed about?
So there's a lot of really cool places in the CDT, and I kind of like pit it up against the Pacific Crest Trail and would even say there's a lot more beautiful places than even that trail, which is my favorite. The difference is, though, that you're kind of connecting the dots with the CDT, where the PCT is pretty consistently good. I would say some of the huge highlights, like everybody talks about the Wind River Range. It's absolutely stunning. It's a place where you're happy to be alive. It's a lot of people's favorite. My absolute favorite, though, was New Mexico. There were some dull moments, I'm not going to lie. Especially that if you're starting north, it'd be your first stretch. It's just a lot of plains and washouts that are really annoying. But the Gila River, like, changed my life. It was so amazing. Just huge canyons. And I went there, and it happened to be like this late or early season snow for October, November, and I was amazed. I was so happy that I did not care that I was walking through snow and walking through a river all day with just bricks for feet. Not to mention there's hot springs in that area, which I will never say no to. So,
how many days did it take you to finish the CDT? That was the last trail, correct?
That was the last trail. So I did take about a week off for a wedding. But as far as on-trail days, I took about 5 zeros. They were all in Wyoming, which was more circumstantial than anything else, but...
The sandals, right?
It was not the sandals. It was, I had an air leak in a sleeping pad, and I had to track down a lazy FedEx driver to get my new sleeping pad. So that cost me 3 days. And then there was a really early snowstorm right hitting Colorado. And so I was really close to the border in Wyoming. And I waited it out there just because I could.
So that was probably your, like, mentally toughest stretch of the whole trail.
It was. Well, also that storm, and to answer your early question, it was 98 days, all things considered. But
I get distracted.
Yeah, no worries. It was actually really wild because I got into Colorado and this was like a record early snowstorm, and it wasn't all too bad to hike in. It melted pretty quick, but what happened is the wind knocked over so many trees. And about a week into Colorado, I'm just getting used to a little bit higher elevation, which isn't a huge deal if you're a thru hiker because you're already kind of up there and you walk a lot. But I got to this spot. It would have been just south of Rocky Mountain National Park, headed into the Winter Park Copper Mountain kind of area, and I get to this sign that says the area ahead is impassable from the trees that fell down. And, I was like, well, I don't have a way back, and I think this was made for normal civilian day hiker, weekend warrior kind of people. I'm just going to send it. So I go through this area, and it is really bad. The trees are really hard to get over, and I have a long day out of it, but it was actually pretty fun. And then the day after that, right at the end of the day, actually, I came to this spot that was just absurd. Like, I had to climb, I ended up 10 feet off of the ground, climbing over trees, and it was just, finding an actual flat spot of ground was super hard, and it ended up being, I found, probably, a 6.5 to 8 foot patch of actually trail that was flat and remarkably didn't have a tree covering it. And so I ended up camping there. I went to get water, and it took me about 10-15 minutes. And water was really close. It took me 10-15 minutes just to find where I'd put my stuff back. Little mini panic attack there. But we made it. Not always the best thing to leave your sleeping bag when that's what keeps you alive and you don't know where it is. But I found it.
That's what matters.
That is what matters. And
well, you would have been waiting again for another FedEx driver.
That would not have been fun. Then the morning after that, I ended up hiking, I had 3 or 4 miles, and it took me a long time. I actually did meet a guy who was out when all those trees were coming out. He was expecting, a snowstorm, and he ended up with a tree storm, so I did not have that level of drama, but it took me a good half hour just to do 1/10 of a mile in a lot of those sections, and reaching the tree line and finally being above it, I've never been more relieved to be in high altitude in my life.
Now, since, you kind of touched on a snowstorm in Colorado,
mm-hmm.
and you touched on trees,
mm-hmm.
what other kind of natural disaster type, or just stuff getting in your way because of nature? What else happened to you on the CDT in particular?
So, nothing too severe. That's probably the most dramatic I dealt with. But I will say, you could follow the AT and you could follow the PCT while you're sleeping, practically. It's so easy to stay on trail. It's well marked. And, the PCT, you can follow the footprints because it's just dusty enough where it's, super easy to tell which way the hikers are going. But the CDT, a lot of the time, you're walking on a road and then you transition to a trail and then back to a road, and then sometimes you need to get on a road when it looks like you're supposed to stay on a trail. I got off course all the time. I would use gut hooks, and you kind of get in a habit of just checking to make sure you're still on course the time. And a lot of the time it's just this little path that's right here, and you walk right by it.
Would you almost say gut hooks is necessary for the CDT? Or is there other ways you could do it without that?
I do feel pretty competent with a map and a compass. But when I'm through hiking, I like convenience because I'm already walking 30 miles. I don't need to spend 20 minutes looking at a map and figuring out where all the turns are. I definitely could, but it's just not something I'm interested in doing when 20 minutes makes a mile, And I will also say that, the little, especially for the CDT, getting off course and the little bits of brush that get in your way, I found it really hard to hit 3 miles an hour, which is something that I did pretty consistently, even on the AT. And, that's not necessarily an easy pace, but it was just man, it is hard to make progress out here. So, every minute counts a lot of the time when you want to do 30-mile days out there.
Now, was you on a particular time crunch? Is that why you wanted to do 30-mile days, or is it more of like a mentality of yourself wanting to push yourself? Like, what was the cause of all that?
It was a lot of things. I think going faster is a little bit easier on the budget. I feel like I was able to live pretty extravagantly while still spending a pretty low amount for actually being on the trail. Then on top of that, I had set out to do a calendar year Triple Crown this year, and while that didn't happen, I still wanted to do really well and put out a time that I was proud of for both of these trails. And part of that was just that I wanted to do it under 100 days.
And you hit that.
I did, yeah.
Hit that.
I even had a day to spare.
Okay, now anything else you want to say about the CDT before we move on to the next trail? Like, just anything that pops in your mind about the CDT that people might want to know about, or just maybe tips or tricks if someone's planning on doing the CDT.
I think, and this is maybe a saucy opinion here, I think the best trail community is the CDT. And it's not the most social trail. It's really not. I probably only saw, I saw a lot of people, but I only probably spent 4 or 5 days actually hiking with other people. And that can be really lonely, and if you're not used to that, that's crazy. But I will say that every northbounder I met, and every time I met with us or saw another southbounder, we would sit and talk for probably 15 to 30 minutes, almost without exception, because it was just so special to see another hiker. And, part of that was the 2020 thing. People had all sorts of reasons to be hiking or to not be hiking. But it was really amazing. I've stayed in touch with a few people that I've met, and when I did spend a day hiking with another person, it was really pretty incredible.
Where you don't get the benefit of seeing other people much, when you do see someone, it makes it more special.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really...
So you're automatically closer to, you almost feel closer to the person because you're both out here and you're both alone type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think. Last thing about the CDT, and then we'll move over to the AT. What was your favorite town on the CDT?
Oh, that is a tough question.
Is it in Wyoming?
Is it in Wyoming? So there are towns that I did not stop in, which I think Lander is a big one that people talk about that I just didn't end up going to. I think Atlantic City, there's 48 people that live there. The population sign says about 48, and that's because in the height of summer season, there's 48-ish people that are there. There's a bed and breakfast there called Wild Bill's. They have a hot tub, which that's a good way to win my heart. But,
so with you, hot springs and hot tubs, that's where it's at,
that's,
right?
Yeah.
That's the two necessary.
But there's this guy Wild Bill and his wife Carmilla, and they're crazy. They're bantering all over the place, telling these hilarious stories, and they serve these kind of family style breakfasts and dinners, and it was a really special place.
So you done the AT first this year that just passed?
Yeah, that's right.
And what made you want to do the AT before you started your yearly Triple Crown?
What made me want to start the AT? So, basically, it started with wanting to do the CDT. I didn't want to do the AT last on my Triple Crown because I love the West Coast, and it's it just would be kind of a letdown to me to finish with that trail. So, gosh. You can't see it, but dogs are trying to get in my room. And yeah, I was just like, all right, like I'll do the AT and the CDT in the same year, and then I was like, you know what? Let's just do all three. And so once I kind of had the logistics running through my mind, I couldn't get them out of my head. So I decided to start with the AT because I thought, let's get the hardest out of the way first. That'll be the easiest with a time frame because I don't know my own capabilities. Is a little bit of a limit finding journey for me too. So it's like that allows the most time to find it. If it takes me the whole year to do the 3 trails, then I have the whole year kind of.
Okay, what do you think the most difficult section of the AT was? What?
Oh.
And so you guys know we're just going to briefly hit on the AT because we did a interview about the AT not too long ago.
It was really right when I finished.
Yeah, so if you want to know very, very detailed stuff about the AT, just jump on over to that video. I will have it popping up right now somewhere.
Yeah, so the hardest, it's a little bit of a toss-up because if you've heard me talk about the AT, you've probably heard me gripe about Southern Maine.
A lot.
It's
a lot.
It's tough up there, and I had a hard time with it, and anything that makes me go slow is just really challenging. Although when I started the AT, I hit snow pretty quick, and Grayson Highlands was like, the low of the day was 8 inches, the high was like, and these were snow drifts, but they were like waist deep for me, and I'm a tall dude. So it was pretty tiring being up there, and snowy cold is relentless, and all of you winter AT hikers, I commend you. It's not my style. And also trying to like bring the world of ultralight hiking into winter hiking. It's just funny because I have these comically large gloves that are just hanging off of my backpack if I'm not wearing them. It's a trip.
Okay, and what do you think the most beautiful section or the most surprisingly beautiful section on the AT was? What was
So the biggest surprise I think is New Jersey. Is it as spectacular as Mount Washington or the views on Katahdin? No. But it was my favorite state. You get these huge fields, these like alpine lakes that are somehow in New Jersey. It is not anything like what you see on the Jersey Shore. And to top it off, there's all these delis. It's spectacular. I love New Jersey. Biggest surprise out there.
Now, with delis in New Jersey, is there any other little things that kind of areas of the AT has that you don't get on other trails? Or not as much as other trails with like community type stuff?
You know, I think the trail magic is a lot more something that you can expect, not necessarily while COVID is happening or while you're out there super early, but it's a little bit more ritualized where like the CDT especially is it's very sporadic trail magic. Someone asks you at a trailhead what you're doing and they're like, oh, well, I have a sandwich, you know, as opposed to the AT where like sometimes you'll have people waiting there for you and be like, oh, sweet. So that's something that's kind of special that the AT has, and I think just a lot of communities. I don't think I did do a 5-day resupply on the AT actually, but that is not...
Was it needed, or did you
It was completely unnecessary. We just did it because we were like, what if we could only do one resupply in Vermont or something dumb like that?
So, with it being the AT's pretty much the only trail that is spaced out the way it is, where you're hitting a new state every 50, 100, like at most, 300 and some miles in a state?
Virginia is about 500.
500, and then Pennsylvania is about 300.
Yeah.
Well. So does that get you a different mindset crossing state borders, like, so often compared to the other two?
Yeah, you know, it helps. I think the AT is the hardest mental game. And there's just like a lot of markers and waypoints, you know, especially once you get into the Northeast. You're like, not only is there a state marker like all the time, especially you finish Pennsylvania and then it's like New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, then you're in Vermont. You know, that's 6 states that go by really fast, but like even between those, it's like you hit the 1,500 mile marker, and then you're sooner or later you're gonna hit the, is it 3/4 way? I'm blanking a little bit, but then you'll hit the 500 miles to Katahdin sign, and then up in Maine you hit a 2,000 mile marker. So it's just like all of these things. It feels like you're hitting a pretty important waypoint every day, so you kind of use that to keep your mental space going, like, all right, like, or for me it's just kind of, how am I going to update people? It's like, I made it to this today, like, how cool is that?
Okay, since we kind of said Virginia's the longest state,
Mm-hmm.
and then you was talking about the mental game, is the Virginia blues a real thing? Or was you going a little too quick at that time to kind of have that mindset?
Yeah, so...
Or can you see where that would be a
It's-
thing if it wasn't necessarily for you?
It's kind of funny. So I think I had a really bad attitude about the AT. I was like, it just wasn't ever the West for me. It was cold all the time, and then the second half was a little bit better. But I really enjoyed Virginia. It was up there in my favorite. It's probably my second favorite state.
Okay.
And I was pretty insistent, like, no, I'm not going to have Virginia blues. Like, let's just get through this. And I was pushing pretty big miles. I think I averaged 32 through Virginia. And it was really pretty smooth sailing for that state for me.
Now, also, if you want to know more about that, because I'm pretty sure we went into detail with that, too, on the last video, on, like, your speed through Virginia and stuff like that.
We might have.
I'm
but
pretty sure.
Yeah, if it's not on the other video, very, very briefly, I sped up. I was a lot faster on the first half of the trail. I took a break, and I slowed down a bit for the second half because I wasn't expecting a Challenger or Triple Crown anymore.
Okay, now, is there anything else you want to point out about the AT in this video, or do you think with what you've said now and the other video kind of has you covered?
You know, it's hardcore. It's the hardest, I think, of the three. But yeah, I'm really glad that I did it, but I also, it's hard.
So, let's jump into the PCT. Why not, if you're ready, if you want to wait a
Yeah,
second.
I love the PCT.
Okay.
I even PCT sweatshirt.
So, this is one trail I haven't talked to you about much, and I've always been kind of interested in, especially with your experience and stuff on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell everybody kind of what the PCT is, what states it goes through, stuff like that.
So California, Oregon, Washington, you're pretty much in mountains the entire time. The Pacific Crest is kind of this big arch of mountains that go across the west side of the country, not quite to the coast, but it is not the Pacific Coast Trail. I think that is the easiest way to get under the skin of any PCT hiker. But it's also such an easy mistake to make.
But I'm pretty sure Highway 101 people consider the Pacific Coast Trail?
That would be...
As in driving? Like,
I think
I've heard
Pacific Coast Highway.
Highway. Okay, I know I've heard that term somewhere. I didn't know if that was about that or...
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Well, we're getting off topic, which is normal on my channel. So, let's go on to... there's only 3 states, but out of them 3 states, what do you think was, like, the best, most beautiful state?
Oh, that's such a hard question.
Especially since California is huge.
California is huge. A lot of the PCT hikers will kind of break it into 5 sections. So Washington, Oregon, and then Northern California, Sierra Nevada, and SoCal or the desert, and they're all amazing. I can tell you my favorite was Oregon, actually, which is kind of uncommon for through hikers. I guess I also said I like New Jersey, so maybe I'm just an anomaly.
Uncommon,
and I like
yeah.
New Mexico. I'm weird, but a lot of that had to do with just the headspace I was in. But I also had a really amazing experience in Oregon where I did this 24-hour challenge where I basically was like, let's see how many miles I can do in 24 hours. I stopped at 23 hours with 60 miles, and I think I could have pushed myself to do more, maybe less. It's not a bad time. I definitely know people that have done like 80. It's crazy. But what was amazing about that experience was I saw Mount Jefferson and Mount Hood on the same day. I was through that whole wilderness area, and it was the night of the Perseid meteor shower, which I had no idea what that was until I saw it, and it was crazy. After that, I took a 40-minute nap at like 5 a.m. And when I woke up, I saw just the most amazing view of Mount Jefferson with the sun rising. And I climbed up to the top of the hill, which my genius self decided to do a 24-hour challenge with the biggest climb in Oregon in the middle. Fortunately, Oregon's pretty flat. But then I climbed up to the top, right where you enter into Mount Hood Wilderness, and off in the distance there was poking through the clouds, and it was a really special day. I was kind of Oregon was where I kind of started to do my own thing, and I had been with a trail family that was great for 600-700 miles, but I kind of wanted to do Oregon faster than they did, so I split from them and found a bit of independence, but still really enjoyed the people that I did interact with. After my 24-hour challenge, there was Timberline Lodge, which is such an amazing buffet breakfast. Oregon was just a time. Washington was probably the most beautiful to me, especially Goat Rocks and Alpine Lakes Wilderness. The Sierra Nevada also just made me laugh in a way that I couldn't quite explain.
So it's almost hard to choose a certain area.
It really is. The PCT
seems like it's very diverse. Kind of like you go through a lot of different areas.
You really see something new every day on the PCT, and it's consistently good, and you don't always know what to expect, and then you hit Washington and you just see Mount Rainier all the time, which is so wild. And the desert has its really amazing moments too. San Jacinto is such an awesome peak where you'll go up, and if you hit it on the right day, which I got lucky enough to do, there's just these rolling clouds that make you feel like you're sitting outside an airplane window, where it's just spectacular. And yeah, it's an unbelievable trail, and the trail itself too is just, it's a work of art, really. It's like architectural genius right there. It's, in my opinion, one of the wonders of the 20th, 21st century. Just
so you would almost say it seems like the PCT is your favorite out of the three, just by that.
Yeah.
Now, what made you hike that to begin with? Like, what made you take the step to start your Triple Crown on the Pacific Crest? And did you think you was going to do a Triple Crown when you started the PCT?
I only ever had planned to do the PCT. I heard about it in high school, and when I started leading wilderness trips for this camp in Wisconsin, I started to bring it up as a joke, and people started to take me seriously. And next thing you know, I was taking it seriously. I started talking about the PCT. I never stopped. I'm still talking about the PCT. Every day until I started. I think the only time I wasn't talking about the PCT was when I was on the PCT.
So, you almost think it was like a childhood dream that came true and kind of started everything? Or could it be a little more than that? Just like...
You know, it wasn't quite a childhood dream, because I didn't know what it was until I was 17, 18 years old. But it did become a dream, and I was just so excited. I was like, I'm going to finish college, and I'm going to go hike.
And that's what you did.
It is. It is what I did.
You haven't really stopped since.
Yeah.
You've had an interesting few years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the PCT, what was the biggest struggle? What was the hardest part?
You know, not
necessarily in like location of the hardest part, just like what was the hardest thing through like the trail as a whole? What was like, was it the mindset? Was it water? Was it resupplies?
So,
especially since it was your first trail too, it could be different than what. Could it be where it was your first trail? Could have that been the hardest part?
That was definitely part of it. Getting used to a culture of hike your own hike was really bizarre to me, because I'd always traveled around with packs of people. But at the end of the day, the PCT was actually really, really easy for me. There was absolutely challenge. I mean, I did 60 miles in a day. Like, that is hard. But I think everything that I did where I pushed myself to the limit was something that I was always choosing to do, and I didn't really feel
needed to. Didn't need to do it.
I didn't feel overly stressed out about something. We got a really low snow year in the Sierra that year, and I got so little rain. I got more rain my second day on the AT than I got the entire PCT, and I'm not joking.
Okay, well, let me think. Now, with the community of the PCT, would you almost say it's somewhere in between, kind of like comparing all three trails? Would it be like the middle ground between the AT and the CDT? Or how do you feel about that with the community?
It's hard to say, because my AT experience was not a normal AT experience. I did the whole first half of the AT almost entirely alone, and then I had a really small trail family for the second half of the trail that was kind of spaced out, and seeing AT hikers was not a common thing. I would say that it's probably pretty comparable to the AT. Now, the PCT I did a flip-flop of, so I started at mile 650 Walker Pass and went to Canada. Then I found my way back and hiked the last 650 miles south. And I will say that I felt pretty similarly to the CDT community on the southbound section. And the southbounders that I did pass, even though it was a little bit more individualistic, it seemed like it was a little bit tighter knit and a little bit more special. Not to say that there weren't incredible northbound hikers, but I think there was kind of this, oh, it's just another hiker every time you saw a northbounder, because there's so many of them. And yes, it is cool that we're all doing the same thing, but you know, you could pull up, there are times when I hit a campground that was like, there were 60 tents there.
So you would almost say you can make any of the three trails a very community-based or a non-community-based, depending on which way you hike it, what time of year you hike it.
Yeah, 2020 might be a bit of an exception to that, but
for the most part, you can almost plan it out. So if you want to be around people, you can, but if you also want to make it more of a lone type thing, you could also almost do that too.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I mean, we have the pants up here. We might want to talk a little bit about that. So what can you say about the pants?
Yeah, so you can kind of see I've got the Trailblaze for each of them, which was, hello Sigmund, So this is the original pair right here. I commandeered them from my youth group in high school's costume box, and I kind of was like, these are awesome, I'm taking them. I did not know I was going to thru hike in them, but I pulled them out on wilderness trips because they're made of nylon, and I really love them. They're incredible. They are beat to bits.
Did they go the whole...
They did.
Okay. Did all three of these go the whole length? Or?
All three of them went the whole length of their respective trail. So I found these, and I patched them up pretty good. Let me do a little bit of show and tell here. I am not a seamstress. My friend who made these two pants are. But I made this really lovely crotch patch looking thing out here. Someone told me that this pair of pants was not going to last 2 weeks on the PCT, and I was like, no, I'm going to get them the entire way. You just watch.
And you did.
I sure did. And the elastic started going out. There's pieces of that are in rough shape. If I can hang them back up, that would be great. Okay, we're good.
Okay, and then those pants almost look like they're the most beat compared to the
so they had some wilderness experience beforehand.
So you almost say that's for more miles, or
not quite more miles, but these pair saw more campfires, and they're made to be a costume, so they're a little bit more flimsy. I got a really good rip on them probably my last day in Washington, which was right before I went back down to finish the trail off. But at that point, 600 miles left. There's a rip from my ankle all the way to my knee. It's whatever.
So that's kind of how you got the name Flamingo, I'm guessing.
Yep.
That plus being kind of tall.
Yeah.
Quite tall.
I really was like, I know I'm going to get a trail name for my pants. I might as well just wait until I hear one that I like, and that's what I did.
Was that the first one, or...
People had thrown around hot pants, pink, and maybe fire pants or something like that. I was just like, those are dumb.
Then Flamingo.
No offense if that's your trail name. I did not.
Yeah, fire pants. You hear that, man? He's out there. He's out there watching. I'm telling you, he's not happy with you right now. Mr. Fire Pants. Yeah, he's out there. I'm telling you. If Fire Pants, if you're watching, by like 1% chance, put a comment and tell Flamingo how you feel.
Fire Pants is a good name, but
we can't do that.
Not quite for that.
You can't go back on your word.
Okay, yeah.
You can't say...
Sorry, Fire Pants, your trail name sucks and it's abysmal. Poncho said it, not me.
Yeah. What? No. That's whatever. As long as you comment, I'm happy with you. Just go to the next pants. Let's go to the next. So the AT.
So the AT, which is surprisingly the cleanest.
Slightly different shade.
Yeah, they are slightly different shade. I had a hard time finding the material, and then
it's a shame, man.
Was walking through Walmart of all places, and there it was in its nylon greatness. I was like, all right, how much fabric do I need, Amy? Sent it her way, and I got 2 pairs of pants made. I was originally thinking maybe I'll take this pair on both of the trails. I think it totally could have made it, but it was kind of cool to have
a pair for each. Yeah, that makes sense. And then you have the CDT over there, which is your newest addition to the wall.
Yep. And as you can kind of see, these ones are a little dirtier. I think the reason for that is it's definitely more sweaty on the AT, but it's just longer between washes, and when you sweat on the CDT, it's like dust kind of sticks to it and
makes it a little.
And and they get beat up because you're having to hop over barbed wire fences and things.
Okay, so let's get to the last 3 questions, which some of these you've already answered. This is kind of all the trails all together. Out of the three, overall, in your opinion, which is the hardest? And why?
The AT, definitely the hardest. It's a mind game constantly. You get to a viewpoint and it's the same view that you've been seeing for 1,000 miles. And the trail is just hard. You're going straight up, you're going straight down, you're climbing up ladders if you're in Maine. Pennsylvania, your feet hurt. New York, your feet hurt. New Jersey, somehow you're like, okay, this is great. Or at least I am. And it's just so much weather.
Okay, and then now that we have that out of the way, we know it's not the easiest. But out of the three, which one do you think was the easiest and why?
The PCT was definitely the easiest for me. Even though it was my first through hike, I feel like I dialed myself in really well, and it was just a highway. It was so easy to walk on, and I feel like 90% of the PCT you're not looking at your feet because it's so easy to walk. And it's just so nicely made.
So, okay, and then the last question.
Such good weather, too.
Out of the three trails, what do you think the most unique one was, and why?
So, I would definitely say the CDT is the most unique. It's really something special between the places that you go, but then it's contingent on the divide, and you have different ways that you can do the trail, and there's not a specific route that you have to stick to. And something else that's really interesting about the CDT, at least this is my experience with it, is when there were people that had hiked the CDT for the first time, the community was small enough and kind of independent enough that they weren't going to just be like, oh, this is how you hike. And so I saw a lot of people that were first-time hikers that were doing things and going about the trail in a way that a lot of seasoned through hikers wouldn't. There were people that were wearing boots, which some people do, but there were hikers that were only doing 20-mile days for a trail on the west side of the country, which you kind of get this impression that you have to be doing 30s, and that's not necessarily how it has to be. And they still were all finishing, and it was really cool because you just have this trail experience where you're on this kind of broken up trail where there's a lot of roads, but you find that the road walks sometimes are really great. I really loved the road walks in New Mexico, and the only reason I ever would have been walking on a road was for a through hike, because why would you go on a just week-long trip and be like, let's go walk a road? But when it's necessary, then you kind of have to do it, and you almost look forward to it because you're going to be walking way faster. And then you're surprised by what you see. It's, it's not necessarily the way I would try and sell a through hike, like, oh, the road walks are the best part.
Do it for the road walks, man. That's why you do it. You do a through hike for the road walk. Flamingo. Cut it.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
It's truly a different experience, and it's pleasantly surprising. Even drinking water from cow troughs becomes something that is a little bit magical. And
plus, I don't know if you've heard, but the road walks are amazing.
It's true.
Yeah.
There are amazing road walks.
Anything else that you want to cover on any of the three trails, or overall a quick breakdown on who you are, maybe?
What
your future plans are, that would be good to put in there too?
I do not have any immediate future plans other than trying to explore the world of climbing a little bit better. I will say that while I am biased to the PCT, that these are 3 great trails, but also that there are more than 3 trails in this country. There are a lot of national scenic trails and a lot of really beautiful places out there and out in the world but I kind of share the sentiment of, like, if you're gonna hike a trail, go to the trail that compels you and kind of calls your name.
So it doesn't have to be a huge trail that people know about. It could be a local trail that's only a couple hundred miles long.
Yeah, it could totally be that. You don't
have to be gone for 6 months, right?
Right. And if you are, like, you might really, the AT might just have your heart, and that's awesome. Like, you don't have to love the PCT as much as I do, and it's really what's calling your name. And
I think it's almost part of, like, what trail you hike first will always have a special connection to.
That's true.
Like, if someone hiked the CDT first, you'd be like, yeah, the CDT was my favorite, because it's just like a connection.
It could be that way. Not everybody's first hike is their favorite hike, but there is
mental kind of backbone.
There's that first experience, and like, I had a lot of time on the PCT. It was just taking 0 days and really taking my time. I didn't have a 100-day goal. I think I did it in about 125, which I guess is really, like, maybe slightly above the middle line. But
so is there anything else you can think of, or do you think we got everything covered?
I think we got everything covered. I'm
gonna have his Instagram in the description again. Anything else you'd like in the description?
Well, I am affiliated with a nonprofit. There is only as much time as is in January to donate it to it. So my page will have expired because it's for 2020, but I still will hold to that. The nonprofit organization December is doing incredible things to put an end to human trafficking. It's an organization that is anti-slavery and for the empowerment of other people, and I'm all for that. And they partner with very worldly minded places and have kind of a global look that are all about making the world a better place, and I can always get behind that.
I think that is everything.
I think so, yeah.
So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and like always, I'll see you on the sunny side.
See you then.
Oh, I'm trying to steal my last word thunder.
You bet.